Hello, and welcome to the last module of the semester, where we are going to explore the art world since the 1950s. And this information is taken directly from Canvas, just giving you an overview of where we're starting here. And I think the key is that a lot of the European avant-garde artists we discussed in the last module they leave for the United States in the traumatic aftermath of World War II. And that really shifts the nexus of the art world to places like New York City, art schools like Black Mountain College in North Carolina, Chicago, and beyond. What we want to achieve in this module is identifying major monuments of art from around the world in the past 70 years, assess the essential role of art and architecture in the major political, social justice, and ecological movements from 1950 to the present. And I'm just noticing my typo now. Please forgive me. I'm going to fix that on Canvas. We want to outline different ways movements reacted against high modernism, the kind of drive towards abstraction that we see in the avant-garde from 1900 to 1950, and the new art movements that seek a different approach to making. And then finally, this time period is a time of great social justice movements and a drive for equality around the world. And so we want to understand how artists grapple with legacies of racism, sexism, cultural chauvinism, colonialism, and other forms of oppression and discrimination. We're going to start with what I call Proto Pop Art. And really, it's two artists, Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper. They are not really members of the pop art group, but we're going to see they're kind of transitional figures between abstract expressionism and pop art. We're in post-war United States, and the United States has a kind of economic boom after World War II. The war wasn't fought for the most part on United States soil. The United States economy grew and really picked up momentum after World War II, unlike Europe and Asia. And we see in this era a rise of mass consumerism and the standardization of life. Things like suburbs with cookie cutter houses. TV standardizes the media and culture around the country. Fast food is invented. Places like McDonald's, all of these things that create a kind of common consumer culture around the US. Here we're looking at Rauschenberg's An Erased de Kooning from 1953. And it is exactly as it's titled. Rauschenberg asked for a drawing by the abstract expressionist Willem de Kooning, whom he knew. He carefully erased it. He signed the work and then displayed it as his own, and he called it his artistic manifesto. Think about that kind of macho James Dean kind of heroic subjectivity of abstract expressionists. Here we see an erasure of that, an elimination of it. There's a critique of the self-seriousness of the abstract expressionists in Rauschenberg and John's work in a way that's similar to many of the Dada artists who critiqued the self-seriousness of the expressionists. There's not a goal here to create a new style, but instead an erasure and a rejection of that kind of American machoism of de Kooning and Pollock. And this rejection of abstract expressionists' hyper-masculinity also has to do with Rauschenberg's own identity as a gay man at a time of extreme discrimination of gay individuals in the United States and around the world. Rauschenberg developed what he called a combine painting. And this is an example of a combine painting titled Bed from 1955. So a combine is the assemblage of objects. There's a focus here on the outside world, a quilt, sheets, not on the artist's inner psyche. And this combine, Rauschenberg is then juxtaposing with a kind of, again, a kind of humorous critique of abstract expressionism, where he's splattering the paint in a similar way to the action painters like Pollock, but he's doing so in more of kind of a mocking jest. Also think about the choice of bed here. A bed is intimate. It's the site of a romantic relationship. And again, think about Rauschenberg's own identity. He doesn't fit into the macho world of action painting. So how can he pour out his own emotions, his subconscious, his feelings in a society and in an art world that shunned and rejected his existence? Jasper Johns began his artistic career under the guidance and support of Rauschenberg, and they both got their start designing display windows for department stores, and so they had a lot of commercial success. Rauschenberg and Johns were lovers for 6 years during the 1950s. They lived together in New York at the time, and this was a very prolific time for both of these artists. Johns often worked in paint, and specifically in encaustic, which is a colored wax that is melted into a composition almost like an inlay. And we see in this encaustic work, we have what seems to be an exact replica of an American flag, but it is a painting. And we see 3 different sized paintings of the American flag stacked on top of each other. There's a kind of, I think, rhetorical play on reality and representation. The 1950s. Let's think about the historical context for this piece. The 1950s was not just the birth of popular culture and McDonald's and TV, but it's also a time of a Red Scare, of a kind of paranoia that swept through US politics and culture, in which anyone with any sort of left-leaning political views lived in fear of being labeled a communist and then being blacklisted, unable to work in their fields. And many artists, many Hollywood directors were blacklisted at this time. Of course, this is the beginning of the Cold War, right? And so there was a lot of kind of hyper-nationalism, hyper-patriotism in this time period. And so we see Jasper Johns, an avant-garde artist, gay, showing us the American flag. Is this his version of patriotism and nationalism? I think it's more complicated than that. Jasper Johns is reproducing the flags, and he did many, many versions of flags as if they are a consumer product, that the flags come in different shapes and sizes as if they were mass-produced toys, shoes, or fashion. And so I think he wants to be critical of the kind of mass consumer culture that he sees developing around him. In the same way, I encourage a comparison with Marcel Duchamp's Fountain, his Dada ready-made from 1917. In a way, Johns and Duchamp have similar artistic goals of encouraging people to push their definitions of what is art, and encouraging people to really push their definition of who the artist is. What is the role of the artist in both of these works? All right, in the next video, we're going to start with Fluxus and the beginnings of performance art in Europe and North America.